So I guess they can hear us. Is this just going to be a thing now?
What's that?
So I guess they can hear us. It's just going to be a thing now?
Oh, yeah. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
I see Steve and Sean in the comments there. How you doing, gentlemen?
Yeah. So, this morning.
Indeed.
Yeah, this morning indeed. Okay, so, maybe some technical details happened behind the scenes, so no cute thumbnail this morning. And good morning to Megan. The lovely Megan Anderson in the chat. I'm Megan Anderson Wilbanks, excuse me. A guy named Jamie might have a problem with dropping that last name there. Anyhow, we've been putting it off, and well, this is the morning where we're gonna go back and we're just gonna kind of give our final thoughts on the train wreck that was the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yes.
So yeah.
And in no small part because Alex made a smart-ass comment yesterday in the comments about how Arbery did nothing wrong. That's just not true. So the comment in particular, Alex said that there was no evidence that he committed any crime. That's a false statement. That's an absolutely false statement. The evidence that was presented in the court that he had committed the crimes were photographs and video of him committing the crime of burglary. Yes, burglary. And I'll qualify that in just a minute. The language of trespass in this case does not apply. What Ahmaud Arbery did was not criminal trespassing, which is a misdemeanor. What he did was burglary, which is a felony. And there's no doubt that he did that. Like, to be very clear on that, the prosecution, in attempting to argue that the McMichaels didn't have the right to conduct a citizen's arrest, stipulated to the uncontroverted fact that Arbery was a criminal committing a crime.
Well, I think what's important to note is, even if we say he didn't commit burglary, even if we throw that away, it doesn't matter. At the time, the citizen's arrest law, basically, you had all of the same authorities that a police officer had. If this exact same thing had happened with a police officer, there never even would have been a question. None whatsoever. And this is really important. The only differences at the time were that you couldn't enforce traffic law if you were a citizen, and you couldn't actually carry people to jail if you were a citizen. But otherwise, all the same rules applied. And this is why it's really, really, really important. All you needed was the reasonable belief that somebody was engaged in a felony and attempting to flee. You don't have to actually be engaged in a felony. Like it or not, if a cop thinks you have done some really, really bad and heinous shit, and they want to stop you, and they want to temporarily detain you, potentially even take you to jail, and keep you in jail long enough for habeas corpus to kick in, they can do that. They absolutely can do that if they think you have committed a felony. Well, at the time, the McMichaels believed that Arbery had committed a felony. Now you say, well, look, they're not cops. They're not cops. It doesn't matter. They had the same authority as the cops. And that's why I bring up the fact that if they were police officers, none of this would have happened.
And Steve asks the right question, and I'm going to address that in just a second. That's where everything went wrong, is the judge, in direct contravention of the law, instructed the jury to treat the law as if it reads the way that you're describing it here, Steve, and it did not.
Yeah, and the stuff that the prosecution brought up during the trial, where they said, well, you never stated to us that day that you were trying to conduct a citizen's arrest. Well, you don't have to? And I want to be flippant and sarcastic, but I mean, like, if it walks like a duck, and if it quacks like a duck, and if it lays eggs that hatch little baby ducklings, it's probably a damn duck.
Well, and you've got one officer that says they never said anything about citizen's arrest to me, but they did call 911 and say, we've got a criminal here, we need the cops to come pick him up. Right? So, it's
and they tried to arrest him.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
Yes.
We shouldn't even say their names.
Die.
You should just,
Die.
Yeah, you should just block them without even talking about
the
it.
citizens. So Steve's question here: didn't they say citizens arrest cannot be applied over hearsay / third-party info? It's not like they saw the video we did. So let me bring up the exact language of the. It's a little. I was looking for it just a second ago. The exact language. This is the revised bill.
Yeah, I wonder if you could even find a copy of the bill before this incident. And look, let me just point something else out, okay? The citizens' arrest laws in Georgia were changed specifically in response to this situation with the McMichaels and Ahmaud Arbery. If they were not conducting a citizen's arrest, if this was not a citizen's arrest gone bad, why are we changing the law again? Why is that? I mean, it's just, it's like one of them thought experiment type questions. And I've talked about this before in previous shows, but I really think this is the point to bring it back up and hammer it. The judge issued his, let's be charitable and call it an interpretation of the citizen's arrest law at the end of the trial. After the entire theory of defense revolved around citizen's arrest gone bad, including Travis McMichael getting up on the stand, and without the citizen's arrest law undergirding his defense, he gets up on the stand and confesses to murder. And look, you could think the McMichaels are murderers. You could say they had no business running that guy down. There's a whole varied range of opinions. I realize that Chris and I are probably in the minority, where not only did the McMichaels not do anything wrong, quite frankly, I think people should police their own communities a little more often. Like, don't rely on the cops. Take care of it your damn self. There's a whole lot less crime. I made the point to somebody else that, if you go down off Fulton Industrial Boulevard, and this is a bunch of black men that are trying to clean up their own communities, and another black man gets killed, we don't even hear about this. And if we do, the black men in question are heroes, and it's a tragedy that somebody had to die in the effort to clean up their community. No, the only reason this was a thing is because it was a white guy. Well, it was a black guy and 3 white guys. That's it. So we go through the entire trial, and then at the end, the judge goes, yeah, whoops, nope, nope. We're not going to allow you to interpret the law in such a way.
Right.
And look, when you come down to criminal defense, okay, our system is set up in such a way to where if there is any ambiguity in the law, and it can be interpreted one of two ways, all right, you're not supposed to interpret the law in the way that benefits the state, because it's the state's responsibility to make the law clear. If there's any ambiguity in the law, it's always supposed to give the interpretation to the defense.
Correct.
Because it's the defense.
And so what has happened in this case, here's the law as it was written, as it appeared before Brian Kemp decided that he needed to get involved and that the George... See, and there's two reasons I just cannot tolerate Kemp sticking around. The hate bill, the hate crime bill, and the theft of individual liberties and individual responsibilities from Georgia citizens over this bullshit alteration of the basic English common law right of citizens to conduct citizens' arrests. So the law as it appeared previously...
Abrams. You had to inject Brian Kemp into it.
Well, he's a shitbag. He's failed miserably. He's not an effective governor. He's on his way the fuck out. He can't and he can't beat Stacey Abrams.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. I hope you like Stacey Abrams for governor.
A private person may arrest an offender well, Stacey Abrams is allowed to steal elections and then allowed to make accusations about stealing elections. We're going to get Stacey Abrams as governor anyway because we don't get the fucking vote for anything in this country anymore. But let's try that. Let's try to come back around. Let's come back to that later. And I'm
you can't take a swing and not expect me to swing back.
And you did swing back, and I swung back again. But let's get back on track.
I know, back on track.
As a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. I'll tackle that by itself in just a second. But then there is a second sentence.
That's right.
If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Now, let me get back to this immediate knowledge point real quick. The reason you have is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. Okay, within his immediate knowledge is for the, bad guy grabbed a purse around the corner and you hear the lady shout, "Help, help, he's got my purse, stop him." Without that immediate knowledge language, unless you watched him do it, you can't help under the law. Right? And then we have this second sentence, where the standard is upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. The second sentence explicitly applies to the event where a felony is committed and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape. This is an important distinction because what Ahmaud Arbery had done was burglary. He had entered a home, right? This isn't simple trespassing. He had entered a home. The home was under construction. But more importantly, he had done it repeatedly in the past. It was his MO. He had been arrested and convicted of having committed the same crime under the same circumstances on multiple occasions previously. And the police were already looking for him, going around showing his picture to the locals, because they knew that he had been doing it again in this area. And that's why they were out looking for him. And it's the reason that they had contacted the McMichaels a few days earlier and asked them to help keep an eye out for this guy to begin with. Everybody seems to forget that the police actually enlisted the McMichaels and several other local citizens to help apprehend this multiple repeat criminal.
And look, and this is important. Even if you say he wasn't committing a felony, even if you're willing to die on that hill, he wasn't committing a felony. There's that whole thing, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Well, they had reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. That their entire defense, I think, hinged on like those last dozen words in the statute. Because it wouldn't have mattered if he was actually committing a felony. Was there a reason to believe he might be committing a felony? Well, yes, there was, because less than 2 weeks prior to this incident, the cops had knocked on their door, showed him Ahmaud Arbery's picture, and said, we think this dude might be armed and dangerous, and ran into your backyard. I was like, oh, holy shit.
That's another important piece of the information that has been intentionally omitted from the entire conversation. The McMichaels were armed when they went to apprehend Ahmaud Arbery because Travis McMichael, the son, the one that actually was holding the shotgun when
got convicted
nobody
of malice murder.
When Arbery tried to snatch the shotgun away from himself and got himself dead. Travis McMichael's pickup truck had been broken into, and a gun had been stolen from it a few nights earlier. Right? So when the police were going around asking people with the picture, hey, have you seen this man? The police instructions were to treat the man as armed and dangerous because the guy who was out robbing houses and breaking into cars had stolen a gun from the McMichaels. Now back to the statute real quick. So there's a lot of context here that's just been completely left out. Ahmaud Arbery was an armed and dangerous repeat criminal apparently committing a crime, which he had a modus operandi of habitual repeat commission for which he had been convicted. And the statute says you've got the first part within his immediate knowledge, within his presence or within his immediate knowledge. And the idea is that this part is supposed to be for things like your shoplifters, trespassers, your kind of low-level basic crimes. The second...
Have a good morning, Steve. Sorry, we got to lose you a little early this morning.
Okay. We'll catch you tomorrow, brother. The second sentence, if the offense is a felony, upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion is a lower burden to meet than is in his presence or within his immediate knowledge, right? It's the difference between, if I have a pen here and Cameron picks up the pen, I have in my immediate presence and immediate knowledge, right? Set the pen down. I turn around, and when I turn back, the pen is gone. I have probable suspicion that that's the only dude that could have done it. But I didn't actually... We'll just pretend like there's not a monitor here where I was watching. But I didn't actually see him do it. Right? But I have absolutely reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion that he took the pen. That's the difference. That right there is the difference between the two. What the judge is saying, what the judge instructed the jury, is that they had to interpret the two sentences together. So basically what the judge did is he said, for the purposes of this case alone, you will understand the law to require the apprehension of a felony offender in an attempt to escape as requiring basically an already being convicted, as requiring the eyewitness being the only person that can do the arrest. And here's where this case gets really, really scary and important for everybody to understand. Prior to these changes in the law, the arrest powers of a citizen and a police officer were identical.
Yep.
With the sole exception that as citizens we cannot enforce traffic laws or actually incarcerate someone. right? I can't arrest somebody and throw them in jail. I have to arrest them and hand them to a police officer for him to throw them in jail. So what this judge has just said is what this freaking activist bar judges. What this judge has just argued and made precedence by giving this illicit instruction to the jury is that a police officer cannot arrest you for any crime unless he personally watches you commit it.
Well, no, that's not what this judge said.
Yes, it is.
No, that's not what this judge said. What this judge said is that a private person has to witness it. That's what the judge said. The judge said you have to take the whole thing together and not as separate sentences.
Right, you have to take the whole thing together.
Right,
and the arrest powers of the police and the citizen are identical.
Well, but it says a private person. I mean, it's like the first three words of the statute. It doesn't say a police officer or a peace officer.
You're correct.
Either way, what the judge said was, oh, your whole theory of defense that you just spent 2 weeks laying out, and the whole thing hinges on, like, those last dozen words of probable suspicion. Mm-hmm. Screw you. And like I said, I understand that Chris and I are in the minority. Even in people that might be somewhat sympathetic toward the McMichaels, like, Chris and I are still in the minority because not only do we not think the McMichaels did anything wrong, I tend to think they actually did the right thing. Clean up your own damn backyard. Okay? For real. But even if you are somebody that that thinks the McMichaels were wrong, they think, and people that I love and respect very much, I said they had no business running that man down, and it dilutes actual self-defense claims to have Travis McMichael claim self-defense. Okay, fine. I would still have you go back to this statute in and of itself, and I would still. I feel like
Alex is asking what crime did he commit. We covered that We covered that for the first 10 minutes. So, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna dive back into it now.
Well, and the point is it doesn't even matter if he actually committed a crime. You just have to have reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion.
Correct.
Which they had. They absolutely had. But even if you're somebody that believes that the McMichaels were shitbergs that had a hero complex that got somebody killed because they thought they'd go LARP as a cop in the backyard, okay, fine. We still have a legal tradition that says if there's any ambiguity in the law, that ambiguity goes to the defense. Always has, well, is supposed to have always has. It did not in this case. So I'm actually going to address Alex's thing. He says, you claim he was stealing, but there's absolutely no evidence he stole anything, no video, nothing. The defense couldn't present any evidence of a crime. The defense did not have to present evidence of a crime. The defense had to present evidence that the McMichaels believed Ahmaud Arbery was committing a crime.
On reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion.
And the reason why they had reasonable suspicion is less than 2 weeks before this incident, the cops came knocking on their door and showed them a picture of Arbery and said, have you seen this man? We believe he's armed and dangerous, and we believe he's related to the burglaries in the area. I don't remember who it was, but somebody actually said within earshot of the 911 call, that's the guy, that's the guy, that's the guy. Because they believed Ahmaud Arbery was the guy. As in the guy that the cops had shown a picture of just recently and said, hey, this is who we believe to be the guy. You know, insert picture of Ahmaud Arbery here. I keep pantomiming it. I hope that comes across. So that's why I keep going back to the defense didn't even have to prove he committed a crime. The defense had to prove that they believed he was committing a crime, that they had a reason to believe he was committing a crime. The police got his description from the younger McMichael on the 11th.
Did we watch the same trial?
Well, you know, it's entirely possible, and it's entirely possible that because none of us have been able to watch the entire trial, because we all have jobs and stuff, but we're kind of coming at this with all having our different pieces of information. But in any event, what was important in this case for the defense was, did they believe that he had committed a crime? And I keep going back to that because that was the key. That's what it hinges on. That's why I keep going back to say, if the exact same thing had happened with a cop, nothing would have happened to the cop. Nothing. Because you have to have reasonable suspicion of a felony. Or they changed the law. And again, I point out, why'd they change the law if citizen's arrest didn't apply here? Seems, kind of funny to me.
Yeah. All right, and that's all we've got for this morning because Daddy's got to go to work.
Oh, and Alex, I love you, brother, but you even acknowledged right there. I've missed the comment ahead of time. All they had was video of him in a home, and they suspected he was stealing. So you're conceding that they suspected he was committing a felony.
Okay, and and not only that, that's not all they had. All they had was video of him in a home, and they suspected he was stealing. They had video of him in a home from which property was taken, and they suspected him of stealing, and he had a history of committing that exact crime and using the jogging cover as his MO on multiple occasions for which he was convicted. If that doesn't amount to probable cause, to reasonable suspicion, then no police officer can ever conduct another arrest.
I'm not entirely uncomfortable with that idea.
Oh, I mean, when they started screaming, defund the police, I was sitting here laughing. I was like, that's not going to work how y'all think it's going to work.
No, there are definitely some communities. What's the meme where
wait. You know what? I agree 100%. None of that is a reason to murder someone. A reason to kill, not murder, someone is that he assaults you and tries to take your weapon away. That's a great reason to kill someone. In fact, it's a legally justified reason to kill someone.
If they'd applied
and one major factor in this case that should have been an absolute boon for the defense is from the video that was released. Nobody ever points a gun at Arbery until Arbery grabs the shotgun. Being armed is not a crime. Assaulting someone is.
Look, I want to just touch this. He says, and Alex says, it's not enough reason to form a lynch mob and hunt someone down as the law showed. No, that's not what the law showed. That's the case the state made. And those are not the same thing.
Correct.
The law, and it's why I keep going back to it. It's why I keep comparing them to cops. The law said they were, and using the language lynch mob, they weren't trying to kill him. They were trying to arrest him. If they were trying to kill him, they could have just ran him over with the truck. Wouldn't have been that hard. They could have shot him way sooner, but they waited until McMichael engaged with them. Now, you could say that they were LARPing as cops. They handled the situation terribly. But to say that it was murder, this case for me personally has really made me re-examine how I feel about felony murder in general. Because it's just like, I get it.
Oh yeah,
I understand
the third guy with the phone. The video guy getting caught, having to cop to felony murder. That's But here, let me make one last point, and then we need to call it so I can get out the door and get to my first contract.
No. You cannot compare the McMichaels to Rosenbaum. They're not child molesters engaged in a riot. That's intellectually disingenuous. You can say that they are wrong, but to equate them to arsonists and rioters and child molesters, that's a stretch, at best.
No, Alex, Arbery was armed as soon as he put the hands on the weapon. But more importantly, as relates to the citizen's arrest statute, the fact that we have any disagreement on this at all, that mere fact coupled with the principle of lenience, the doctrine of lenity, the doctrine of lenity, right? Your disagreement with us favors the state. The doctrine of lenity tells us that any time the ambiguity of the law makes the law such that it cannot be easily understood, then the benefit goes to the defense, always and without exception. That alone, under the law, says without a doubt that under the law, the McMichaels did nothing wrong. It's that simple.
Oh, Sean, I wish you'd made that comment earlier in the show, because that's making my brain go all fizzy. It says, no citizens arrest. Politicos can hide behind law enforcement officers 24/7. That's a hell of a thing to think about right there. Because it's pretty clear that the FBI was never going to arrest Hillary. Damn. Can you hit that top comment badge for Sean?
Yeah, there you go. All right. And that's going to have to be the show, guys. We will see y'all tomorrow.